The biting cold bit into Emma's fingers as she hurried down the narrow street, her breath forming little clouds that mingled with the mist hanging low over the city. The sky was a heavy gray, the kind that threatened snow but hadn't yet delivered. The faded glow of a flickering street lamp cast long, wavering shadows over the cracked pavement, where puddles reflected the dull amber light like broken mirrors. Trash rustled softly in the breeze, carrying the scent of damp cardboard and stale coffee beneath the usual city hum of distant sirens and muffled conversations. Somewhere far off, a dog barked, its sound swallowed quickly by the hollow night. Emma pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her slender frame, her worn boots tapping hurriedly against the uneven sidewalk. The fabric of her gloves was threadbare, exposing her fingertips to the cruel night air, and she could feel the chill seeping into her bones despite the layers. The alleyway ahead yawned dark and foreboding between two aging brick buildings, their walls smeared with graffiti in faded blues and reds, and wet patches where rain had seeped through months ago. The bricks themselves seemed to sag, worn down by decades of neglect and cold winters. She hesitated on the edge, the chill seeping deeper into her bones, making her shiver involuntarily. It was supposed to be a quick trip, just a shortcut home after her late shift at the diner, a routine she'd grown accustomed to but never liked. The winter night wrapped itself around the city with a merciless grip, and Emma's thoughts were already drifting to the small apartment she shared with her boys, the only warmth she could count on. The faint smell of frying bacon from the diner's kitchen still lingered faintly on her clothes, mingling oddly with the crisp night air. But then a faint whimper pierced the cold silence from somewhere deep within the alley, breaking the monotony of the night. Emma froze, her heart pounding unevenly in her chest, the sound echoing in her ears. The sound was fragile, like the soft shaking of a frightened animal or a child's timid plea. She stepped cautiously toward the source, her senses sharpening. The cold seemed to dull, replaced by a sudden sharpness in her hearing and sight. There, huddled beneath a tattered blanket, were two small figures, twin boys, shivering and wide-eyed under the pale streetlight. Their cheeks were flushed red from the cold, lips quivering in silent distress. Their clothes were thin and dirty, and their eyes reflected a mixture of fear and hope. Emma's breath caught, and instinctively, she dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around their trembling shoulders. The alley's harshness seemed to melt away in that moment, replaced by a fierce surge of protectiveness. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered gently, rubbing warmth into their chilled skin. The boys clung to her as if she was their only tether in a frozen world, their small bodies trembling against her. She could feel the rapid beat of their hearts, so fragile and fast, and it stirred something deep inside her. The smell of damp straw and city grime surrounded them, but Emma focused only on the fragile lives before her. What they told her in that alley, amid the cold shadows and whispered fears, would change everything. Emma's mornings began before dawn, with the shrill buzz of an alarm and the weight of exhaustion that never quite lifted. The dim light of her small kitchen flickered as she prepared breakfast, the scent of instant coffee filling the cramped space. As a struggling single mother to 8-year-old twins, her days were a delicate balancing act between providing for them and holding onto the fragile threads of hope. The small apartment they called home was cluttered but cozy, the walls adorned with crayon drawings of superheroes and happy families, visions Emma cherished despite their absence. The worn sofa sagged in the middle, blankets piled haphazardly for warmth, and the faint hum of an old heater was a constant companion during cold nights. Each day, she juggled 2 jobs, waiting tables at a local diner and cleaning offices by night, racing against time and fatigue. At the diner, the clatter of dishes and the murmur of early patrons offered a momentary distraction, but exhaustion pulled at her every limb. The boys, Ethan and Eli, were her world. Despite their hardships, their laughter filled the cramped living room, and their bright eyes sparkled with resilience. Emma taught them to find joy in small moments, the taste of warm soup, the comfort of a shared blanket, the magic of storybooks read aloud under flickering candlelight during power outages. She often caught herself marveling at their ability to find light in darkness. Yet beneath the surface, Emma carried the weight of uncertainty. Rent was overdue, the bills piled higher than she could manage. The father of her children had vanished years ago, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. Friends had drifted away, unable to understand the relentless struggle. Loneliness gnawed at her, but she masked it behind a determined smile, even when tears threatened in the quiet solitude of night. Her hands were calloused, her spirit worn, but her heart remained fiercely protective. Despite everything, Emma held on to a stubborn belief that love could carve a path through darkness. Her nights were often restless, filled with worry about the future, but the moment she kissed Ethan and Eli goodnight, she felt a flicker of hope. They were her reason to fight, her reason to keep moving forward no matter how steep the climb. Tonight, though, as she walked home past the alley where she found the boys, that hope was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. The days after Emma's encounter in the alley blurred into a tense routine of whispered questions and cautious hope. The twins she'd found, Ethan and Eli, had become a mystery entwined with her own struggles. She couldn't shake the image of their shivering forms beneath a tattered blanket, their eyes reflecting a story far darker than mere cold. At night, the alley seemed to call to her, its shadows whispering secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. At work, Emma's mind drifted to them during slow moments, the echo of their voices lingering in her ears. "We don't have anywhere else," Ethan had said softly, voice trembling like fragile glass. "No one's coming." The words haunted her, a silent plea wrapped in innocence, echoing through the hollow spaces of her heart. She found herself tracing her fingers over the worn edges of the blanket she'd taken with her, the rough fabric a tangible link to their pain. But the city was unforgiving. Emma knew that bringing the boys home meant risking eviction, suspicion from neighbors, and the fragile safety they barely maintained. Still, how could she turn away from children who needed her as desperately as her own sons? The thought of them alone in the cold haunted her waking moments. One evening, as she walked past the alley again, Emma noticed fresh footprints in the mud, small, hurried, leading deeper into the dark, like faint signals in the night. A faint glow flickered ahead, revealing an old hay bale stacked against the brick wall, soaked and rotting in the damp, its straw matted and clinging to the bricks. It was the boys' hiding place, a grim shelter from a world that had forgotten them. The damp odor of decaying straw mixed with the city's grime created an oppressive atmosphere that settled heavy in her chest. Emma's heart ached. The hay bale wasn't just a piece of forgotten debris, it was a symbol of abandonment, a testament to the harsh realities lurking beneath the city's surface. She resolved to find out who the boys were, where they came from, and how she could help them survive the icy grip of the streets. The city's alleyways whispered secrets, and Emma was ready to listen. The catalyst came on a night when the wind howled like a restless spirit, rattling windows and stirring every loose piece of trash. The city's usual sounds were swallowed by the storm's fury, the rain hammering down in relentless sheets. Emma had just finished her late shift, weariness pressing down like a heavy blanket, when a sudden pang of unease pulled her toward the alley. Her footsteps were muffled by the wet pavement as she moved faster, heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The hay bale was there just as she remembered, but tonight something was different. From behind it, a faint sobbing broke through the night silence, a sound raw and broken, fragile as glass under pressure. Emma's heart hammered in her chest, her breath catching in her throat. Without hesitation, she knelt beside the bale and gently pulled back the damp straw, the wet fibers clinging to her fingers. There, curled into a trembling ball, were Ethan and Eli. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with fear and confusion, the cold having drawn deep shadows under their eyes. "We're hungry," Eli whispered, voice hoarse and barely audible over the storm. "And cold." The desperation in his words was like a physical weight pressing on Emma's chest. Emma's breath caught. The weight of their desperation was unbearable. She wrapped her coat around them, shielding them from the biting air as best she could. "I'm going to help you," she promised, voice steady but soft, her fingers brushing damp hair from their foreheads. The boys clung tightly, their small bodies radiating fragile hope amid the darkness. The smell of rain, wet straw, and cold concrete surrounded them, but Emma focused solely on the fragile lives in her arms. That night, Emma knew her life was about to change forever. Whatever shadows had driven these boys into the cold alley, she would face them head-on. The struggle for survival was no longer hers alone. It was a shared battle, woven through the threads of a newfound family. Emma's apartment, though modest and worn, suddenly felt alive with new purpose. The twins, wrapped in blankets and sipping warm tea, sat quietly while Emma prepared a simple meal, the aroma of simmering soup filling the small kitchen with comforting spices, a mixture of thyme, garlic, and a hint of rosemary. The soft clatter of utensils mingled with their tentative chatter, a fragile harmony in the quiet evening. The faint hum of the old radiator provided a gentle background noise against the occasional creak of worn floorboards. As the boys ate, Emma listened closely to their story. They spoke in whispers, revealing fragments of a past filled with neglect and fear. Their parents had vanished, leaving them to fend for themselves in the shadows of the city. The hay bale in the alley was their refuge, a pitiful shelter against a harsh world. Their words painted pictures of cold nights and empty stomachs, of running from shadows that chased them relentlessly. Emma's resolve hardened. She couldn't let them slip back into the darkness. With limited resources but unlimited heart, she vowed to protect them. She applied for emergency aid, reached out to community centers, and began weaving a network of support, each step a small beacon against the vast uncertainty. Her fingers trembled slightly as she filled out forms by the dim light of a single lamp, the weight of responsibility pressing down but not breaking her spirit. Her own sons watched with wide eyes, slowly accepting the newcomers into their lives. The apartment swelled with nervous energy and cautious optimism, a fragile family forming amid the cracks of hardship. The laughter of children echoed softly against the peeling walls, and for a brief moment, the apartment felt like a true home. Emma felt the weight of responsibility, but also a stirring strength. For the first time in months, hope felt tangible, a lifeline threaded through shared struggles and quiet acts of kindness. Despite her determination, Emma quickly realized that saving the twins would not be easy. The city's social services were stretched thin, and the bureaucratic maze seemed designed to discourage rather than assist. Each phone call ended in frustration, every appointment a test of endurance. The constant ring of the telephone became a source of dread, each unanswered call a reminder of the system's cold indifference. At home, the strain was palpable. Money was tighter than ever. The boys' presence meant extra mouths to feed, more laundry, less sleep. Emma's work hours doubled, and exhaustion shadowed her every step. Her own children sensed the tension, retreating into silence or bursts of frustration, their once bright laughter replaced by cautious quiet or sharp words. The air in the apartment grew heavier, thick with unspoken worries. One evening, as rain battered the windows, a neighbor's sharp glance reminded Emma that not everyone welcomed the change. Rumors whispered through the building, questions about the twins' past, skepticism about Emma's ability to care for them. The thin walls seemed to carry whispers like ghosts, and Emma found herself shrinking under their weight. The hay bale in the alley remained a haunting symbol, a reminder of the cruelty the boys had escaped and the fragile boundary between safety and despair. Emma's heart ached seeing those bruises on their arms, the haunted look in their eyes when the night grew dark. The cold shadows seemed never far away, a constant threat lurking just beyond the door. The walls seemed to close in, threatening to suffocate the fragile new family Emma was trying to build. But amidst the pressure, a quiet determination took root, one that would not let fear dictate their fate. As days passed, the boys began to open up, their guarded expressions softening under Emma's steady care. Ethan, with his quick smile and mischievous glint, reminded her of resilience itself. His laughter, once rare, began to surface like fragile spring blooms pushing through frozen earth. Eli, quieter but fiercely protective of his brother, slowly found trust in Emma's gentle presence, allowing himself to relax in small moments. The apartment hummed with the energy of new bonds forming. Emma's sons, initially wary, grew to include the twins in their games and bedtime stories. The cramped space echoed with laughter, a rare and precious sound that filled every corner with warmth. The smell of worn blankets and well-loved toys mingled in the air, creating a comforting cocoon against the outside world. One afternoon, as snowflakes drifted lazily outside, Ethan showed Emma a small crumpled paper he'd been hiding, a faded old letter with shaky handwriting. It mentioned an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, a place where their mother used to take them before she disappeared. The paper was brittle, edges worn from being folded and unfolded countless times. The letter became a key piece of their story, a thread Emma clung to in unraveling the mystery of the twins' past. It was more than just paper, it was a bridge between lost memories and the hope of finding answers. The boys' eyes shone with a mixture of fear and hope as they shared their story, their voices hushed but determined. Together, they pieced together fragments of the past, each discovery strengthening their fragile family and illuminating the shadows that had haunted them. The mounting challenges weighed heavily on Emma, but a moment of clarity arrived one stormy night when the city's lights flickered and died, plunging her apartment into darkness. Thunder rumbled through the sky as rain lashed against the windows, the cold seeping in despite the heater's hum. The boys huddled together, fear flickering in their eyes like fragile flames in the dark. Emma lit a candle, its warm glow casting dancing shadows on the walls, painting faces with soft light and deep shade. She gathered the children close, telling stories of courage and hope, her voice steady despite the tempest outside. The scent of melting wax and rain mingled in the room, wrapping them in a fragile cocoon of safety. In that fragile light she saw herself reflected in their faces, a protector, a beacon. The storm outside was fierce, but inside, a quiet strength grew. That night, Emma realized that resilience was not just about endurance, but about embracing vulnerability and love. She allowed herself to lean on others, accepting help from a local shelter and a kind-hearted neighbor who offered food and warmth. The old letter and the memory of the abandoned house fueled her determination. Emma vowed to uncover the truth behind the boys' past, to transform their pain into strength. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within, but Emma's heart beat with newfound courage, a promise to fight for her family against all odds. Just as hope began to bloom, Crisis struck. A social worker's visit brought scrutiny and suspicion, questioning Emma's ability to care for 4 children on her own. The threat of separation loomed, a terrifying prospect that sent her spiraling into despair. The sterile office smelled faintly of disinfectant and paper, and the social worker's sharp questions cut through the fragile calm like cold knives. The twins, sensing the tension, withdrew into silence, their fragile trust cracking under pressure. Ethan's bright smile dimmed, Eli's protective stance faltered. Emma felt the weight of the hay bale's symbolism, their past threatening to engulf their present. The cramped apartment seemed smaller, the walls closing in with every accusatory glance. Financial strain worsened as unexpected expenses piled up. Emma faced eviction notices, and with every setback, doubt gnawed at her resolve. The city's harshness seemed to close in, a relentless storm battering their fragile sanctuary. Nights became restless, filled with whispered fears and quiet tears. In the darkest moment, Emma questioned whether she had the strength to keep fighting, but the memory of the boys' shivering forms in the alley, their whispered pleas for safety, ignited a fierce determination. She would not let them down. The battle for her family's survival had reached a breaking point. The crisis left scars, but also clarity. Emma rallied, reaching out to a community advocate who saw beyond the paperwork to the heart of her fight. The advocate's kindness was a balm, her gentle voice offering hope where bureaucracy had only coldness. Together, they crafted a plan to stabilize the family's situation, applying for housing assistance, counseling, and educational support. The boys, though shaken, began to heal in the warmth of Emma's unwavering love. The hay bale's image, once a symbol of abandonment, transformed into a reminder of survival and hope. Emma introduced the twins to the abandoned house from the letter, now part of a community restoration project, symbolizing renewal. The fresh paint and new windows stood as testaments to second chances. Emma's own sons embraced the twins fully, their bonds deepening through shared experiences and quiet moments. The apartment, though still small, felt like a home forged in resilience. The faint scent of fresh paint and clean laundry filled the air, mingling with the warmth of countless hugs. Emma found strength within herself she hadn't known existed, balancing vulnerability with fierce protectiveness. The storm's aftermath was not an end but a beginning, a testament to the power of love and perseverance. With stability returning, Emma turned her attention to uncovering the deeper mystery of the twins' past. The faded old letter and its mention of the abandoned house haunted her thoughts. She arranged visits to the local archives and spoke with longtime residents, piecing together a story of loss and neglect. The musty smell of old books and faded photographs filled the archive room, wrapping her in the weight of history. Each discovery carried weight. The house had been a shelter for troubled families, closed after a fire years ago. Rumors whispered of secrets hidden within its charred walls, stories of children lost in the system. Emma's determination deepened. The truth was within reach. The faces in the photographs seemed to watch her, silent witnesses to past pain. She prepared the boys gently, explaining why they needed to visit the house. Their eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The hay bale from the alley, their initial refuge, was now a symbol they had to confront to heal. Emma packed warm blankets, flashlights, and the old letter tucked safely in her bag. The night was cold, but her resolve burned bright. This journey would not only reveal their past, but might also pave the way for a future free from shadows. The night was crisp, the sky a blanket of stars as Emma and the boys approached the abandoned house. Its skeletal frame loomed against the horizon, windows shattered, walls blackened by time and fire. The air smelled of ash and forgotten memories, tinged with the faint scent of damp wood and rust. The crunch of dry leaves beneath their feet echoed in the stillness. Inside, the floorboards creaked beneath their feet, and dust motes danced in the beam of their flashlights. The boys clung to Emma's hands, their eyes scanning the darkness with a mixture of fear and fascination. Then, in a dusty corner beneath a collapsed beam, they found it. A small wooden box buried beneath the rubble, its surface scratched and worn. Inside were photographs, letters, and a diary belonging to their mother. The pages revealed a story of love, hardship, and desperate attempts to protect her children from a world that had turned its back. The hay bale was mentioned, a makeshift shelter chosen in a moment of crisis. The words were raw and heartfelt, filled with hope and sorrow intertwined. Tears streamed down Emma's face as the boys read their mother's words aloud. The house, once a symbol of loss, became a sacred space of truth and healing. The flickering flashlight shadows seemed to soften, the weight of the past lifting just enough to allow a breath of hope. In confronting the past, Emma and the boys found the strength to reclaim their future. With the truth unveiled, Emma reached out to support networks dedicated to family healing. Counseling sessions helped the boys process their trauma, and Emma learned to navigate the emotional complexities of motherhood renewed. The smell of fresh paper and crayons filled the counseling room, a stark contrast to the shadows of the past. The abandoned house's restoration became a community project, with Emma and her family playing a part, turning a place of pain into one of hope. The hay bale, once a cold refuge, was replaced by the warm embrace of a home filled with love and laughter. Neighbors who once doubted now offered smiles and helping hands, their voices warm and welcoming. The twins thrived in school, their smiles returning, their spirits lifting with each passing day. Laughter echoed through the halls, and the boys' faces shone with the light of newfound belonging. Emma's journey was far from over, but the darkest chapters had been written. Together they forged a new story, one of resilience, transformation, and unbreakable bonds. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the bustling apartment. The air was warm and fragrant with the smell of brewing coffee and fresh toast. Emma sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee as the boys prepared for school, their backpacks packed and smiles bright. The gentle clatter of breakfast dishes and the soft murmur of morning chatter filled the room with life. The twins laughed with her sons, the sound a melody of hope echoing through the rooms. The hay bale was a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of family and community. The windows let in the soft breeze, carrying the scent of blooming flowers from a nearby park. Emma reflected on the journey, the cold alley, the shivering boys, the abandoned house, and the secrets uncovered. Each step had led to this moment of fragile peace and hard-won joy. The weight on her shoulders felt lighter, replaced by a quiet confidence. She knew challenges would come again, but for now they had found balance, a new dawn born from struggle and love. Emma smiled, ready to face whatever the future held with her family beside her.